Welcome to episode 10 of Chats. Today we are talking about the royal family, more in particular, Meghan and Harry.
Yes.
I'm Corbin.
I'm Sarah.
And I have breaking news.
Are you going to start with?
I'm starting with this breaking news.
So we're going to talk about Meghan and Harry, but Corbin wants to give an update from our last podcast, which was about resolutions.
The resolutions, and we were interested to see how many people were going to be at the gym on January 1st, which I went to.
You actually went on January 1st.
Yes.
You were very dedicated.
Very dedicated. And no one was at the gym. I was the only one at the gym, surprisingly, which in hindsight, not surprisingly. Everyone probably was too tired after New Year's Eve, partied too hard. And the January 2nd, on the other hand, now we're getting into the new faces and such. So the gym is probably the busiest it's ever been since I've been there, which is not surprising since, as we said, New Year's resolutions. But, maybe keep it posted at the next
see
podcast.
When they start dropping off.
Yeah, see if people are dwindling. Maybe maybe they hold on it for a month since maybe that's how much the subscriptions are, a month. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. So nicely transitioning from that to the royal family, there's been some things in the news recently that have caused a buzz, especially with Meghan and Harry and I guess little baby Archie as well. But you're much into the royals more than I am.
Yes. And we kind of talked about this a little bit because you didn't understand as much about what was going on. But to lay the groundwork, I'm a huge fan of the royal family. I've always enjoyed following what's going on, huge into Diana, all that good stuff. So when it comes to anything to do with changes, and specifically the one with Meghan and Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, this could really make a big impact on what the royal family looks like moving forward. Yes. So there's been a lot of negativity.
I've seen mostly negativity from the Twitter and media outlets that I've seen, but
so just to recap for if you've forgotten or if you just aren't up to date, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex announced last week that they want to retreat from being a quote-unquote senior royal position, and they want to be financially independent of the royal family, and they are looking to spend their time between the United Kingdom and North America. So the reason this has been such a big deal for, in particular the royal family, but for anybody who's a fan of the monarchy, is that this is really the first time that anyone has stepped away who, the line of succession is, of course, after the Queen, it's Prince Charles, then it's Prince William, then it's Prince George. Yeah. Right? So because everyone has kind of this romanticized vision of what William and Harry are, being Diana's sons, they feel that, there's no way they should ever be separated. They should be together forever, even when they separated their royal households, which effectively means they basically just grew up and had their own houses. Like they identify as their own individual persons, which is what they should be doing. That's part of growing up. Yeah. So that was a bit of an issue a couple of months back. And of course, a lot of people like to throw that at Meghan, that she's the reason. No, this was going to happen no matter who Harry married. He had to make his own path. He's no longer the spare heir. William has his own line of succession now, right? There's no need to worry about who is going to be king after William because he's got 3 kids queued up, right?
And that's what we were talking about, you and I, after this all kind of went down, and that was the fact that Harry doesn't have to worry about being king at any point unless something tragic happens, knock on wood. But
take out the entire Cambridge line.
And he doesn't have to worry about it. So, in all honesty, I don't get the royal family as much, but I see it from his perspective of, I'm not the king. I'm not going to be something that serious. I kind of want to make, something for myself. I want to.
He needs his own life, yeah.
Exactly. I completely understand. And I think he's always been like that. You're saying he's always had a little bit of that, I don't want this,
He's been very vocal about this not being his chosen life, and as far as how visible his life has been. And certainly some of the issues he's had as far as, some of the antics he's pulled as a younger person. But again, that's the joy of living in a fishbowl. Everyone makes mistakes, but when, you're attached to such a high-profile dynasty, your errors and bad choices are
follow you.
Yeah, well, and everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
You don't get to just sweep them under the rug. So the reason this has kind of come as a bit of a shock is because it sounds like, I'm looking at CBC and pulling from cbc.ca right now, but if you check out really any of the media outlets, they're saying that this is not news to the royal family. They knew that Meghan and Harry wanted to remove themselves, kind of step back a little bit or change their role, because the role that they've been asked to do is not necessarily something that's going to be very fulfilling for them. And they know that there's a platform for issues that are very worthy, that they could be doing more about, and that they're already identified with, such as female equality, mental health, in partnership with what Kate and William are doing, of course. But they have their own flavor on those topics.
And he knows Harry started or helped start the Invictus Games.
Oh, he was the founder.
Yeah. So they have it's not like they're just going out into the world and doing
nothing.
that with nothing. They have experience and a lot behind them.
Yeah. It's obvious that the royal household has been aware that there's been some discontent and some concern about the roles moving forward, especially now that they have a little family of their own with their baby Archie. So now's the time. It looks like they've been trying to have some kind of dialogue, and the update as of the end of last week was, the Queen is upset. And we all know you don't upset the Queen.
No.
But the Queen is upset because apparently the word was that both she and Prince Charles had asked for this announcement not to be made right away, that they wanted to work on it. Which, I get it. How long have we been working on this? Perhaps this is something that's been ongoing for several months, and they got frustrated and said, you know what, it's a new year. We don't want to continue on with this, so let's move forward and get something done. So they forced the issue, is what it sounds like.
They're beating to their own drum, it seems. That's what they want to do.
And as far as some people, you're seeing these headlines about, will Meghan be able to keep her wedding dress? Or, how are they going to afford their lifestyle? Can we just take a moment and realize that both Harry and William are independently, incredibly wealthy outside of the royal family, because their mother left them a considerable amount of money in her will. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got a certain amount. They kind of spread it out that at a certain age they got this amount of money and the rest was in trust type thing.
Very good.
They both have property, access to wealth apart from the royal family. So even if Harry said, "I'm folding up the tent, I'm going on my own," he never has to work again. He'll be fine.
Set for life.
He is set for life. So this idea that, they need the royal family, the biggest impact I can see is that the security they will need would be considerable.
Yeah.
And anywhere they decide to live, it will make an impact both on them and the country that they're going to live in, which right now, they're kind of murmuring that it's looking like it could be Canada.
Yeah.
They spent Christmas in Canada this past year, so.
No, it's exciting news, especially if you are Canadian or a fan of Harry and Meghan. But it's just sad because it seems like all the news outlets are pointing their finger to Meghan as Meghan's a quote unquote home wrecker. Not in the typical sense, but
she's
coming in
causing
and
problems,
putting a wedge between Harry and the family. And I don't, as I said, don't know much, but I know that Meghan doesn't seem like that type of person, and it seems like Harry and Meghan are happy together, and that's what matters in the end.
Exactly, and I think that's a very interesting part of what is going to happen next, because right now we're taping this on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's January the 12th, and it should be up January the 13th.
No, you're going to put it up later today.
Oh, maybe.
He's staring at me with snake eyes do not make me turn this around. So we know that tomorrow, all the headlines are that the Queen has called for a quote-unquote crisis conversation with Prince Charles, Prince William, Prince Harry, and Meghan is going to call in because she is back on Vancouver Island with Archie.
Canada.
She's in Canada right now. So I think that's important because I think it's not necessarily... you don't want to reinforce that thought that she can't be part of this conversation.
Which is unfair.
Yeah, that would be wrong. So, she brings a lot to the table on her own. So I think it's great that she's going to be part of it. So I think that it's going to be a conversation about what can be done to incorporate the work that they want to do and the value for themselves and for the royal family. Because they say they're not trying to walk away and slam the door. They full on said they're going to serve the Queen. They want to be loyal to the Queen. They just see that in the traditional structure of the royal family, it doesn't work. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to have some kind of compromise where they can't take away from what William and Kate are going to do. They're going to make sure that there's not a double court. They don't want to have that happen where there's dueling interests. It's going to be about William and Kate. They're going to be king and queen. But I think what's going to happen is that Harry and Meghan are going to be given some kind of Commonwealth affiliation. They're very much about the Commonwealth, and they incorporate that in their wedding. The Queen is very strong about the Commonwealth affiliation. So whether he has more of a role abroad than he has now, perhaps that's an option. I certainly hope it ends positively. And I know the Queen, we watch The Crown on Netflix. We enjoy watching that.
That's what I was going to say. When I'm, maybe like 40 or 50, this is going to be season 25 of The Crown, and they're going to talk about Harry and Meghan. What are they going to do? They've gone to Canada. That's what they're going to talk about.
I heard it's funny you should say that, because the creator, the guy who's doing the writing for the Crown, has said there will not be any reference to Meghan Markle in the. He will have it wrapped up by then, because his attitude is.
It's about Queen Elizabeth.
Well, not so much, and it's not to slight Meghan. It's the idea is that. It's the perspective, having exactly what you just said, having that perspective with this happened in the past and we're not so emotionally triggered by what's happening. It's more of a case you look back and say, oh, I remember when that happened. I remember that being a big deal. Well, he doesn't want it to go on for 25 years. So for him, I think it's probably going to end up, this is just my estimation, it'll probably wrap up around the time of Kate and William's wedding, and that'll be the nice, or maybe Prince George's birth, where they can sit there and say, and the monarchy is secured for the future, right?
Like a happy ending. Because I think you're right. Where, successful writers always, before they start, they go and they have a whole planned story. They know where they're going to end.
Yeah, a vision.
Yeah, and you have like a lot. Like we haven't gotten to Diane yet. Because at least from what I've seen, I'm not a viewer as diehard as you.
Yes.
But there's so much stuff, untapped potential from where they are now to where you think it might end. But,
and I think that's a good thing, when you look at that story for people who aren't invested in following the royal family. If you are watching The Crown, it is such a good indicator of how this particular incident is going to be handled, because there have been much larger
scandals.
Issues that the Queen has had to handle, or the royal family has had to handle. Back in the day when Princess Margaret was falling in love with a commoner who was divorced, dear God, there couldn't be anything worse than that. That was the worst thing that could happen. Now, people yawn over stuff like that. They actually think that's isn't that quaint that back in the day that was an issue. When Charles and Diana, to back up, Princess Anne divorced her first husband, Mark Phillips, and that was scandal because, the first divorce in the royal family since King Henry VIII. And it's like, well, this is scandalous. And over time, it's not scandalous anymore. So when you look at the future of things and what this means, I think this is an interesting time to follow the monarchy.
Yeah, get into the crown or get into looking into the royal family,
Because there's going to be a change.
Yes.
And some people say, especially if you're in England, there's a difference of opinion. Some people think that the royal family is great value for the dollar as far as their brand recognition and their ambassador role abroad. And I mean, every time they have a royal wedding, they bring in billions of dollars in tourism and revenue associated with marketing these weddings.
Just year-round tourism. Like when I have been to Buckingham Palace, not inside, but the amount of people on the road or on the side of the road watching the changing of the guard
on a Wednesday.
It probably was a Wednesday, was impeccable.
Yeah.
How many people there were. So, and the thing is, it's one of those things say Star Wars, where even if you don't know what it is about, you know it, right? I don't know what the royal family is really about, loosely, but
you knew it was something.
I know it's something, and that's powerful.
Yeah.
So, you know what? This is interesting because I feel like this is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this has never happened before, specifically.
No.
So this is exciting times, and you know what? I'm kind of happy for them because they seem like Will and Kate seem like the more traditional.
They're bound by tradition, for sure. Their path is already made for them.
Yeah. and they're doing a good job of it. But Harry never seemed. I could never picture Harry in Will's position. I couldn't. So I think this is, a perfect time, perfect people, and I'm excited to see what happens next with these guys.
Well, and I think it's going to be interesting after the Monday meeting to see what they come out, how soon they come out with something, and what the compromise looks like. Because, I mean, Charles is not going to want to lose his son, and certainly not. No one wants to see a family fracture over this, and I don't think even Harry wants that. That's not the intention from what they're saying. They just realize that there's more for them to do out there, and I mean, let's face it, and we saw that with a couple generations in the crown, the confines and the restrictions in place with the royal family are profound.
Yeah.
You don't get to, make certain decisions about your life. You want to name your kids? Well, if your husband is the king of, future king of England, you probably have to pick from a list of approved names, because you certainly can't name him Barney.
No.
That's the duality of it.
That.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But going back to what I was saying about, the mixed emotions about the royal family, there are some people in Britain who feel that they're a waste of money and that they just cost the money.
That's heavily featured in the Crown show. At least
we're
from
just
what
coming
I've seen,
into that,
where people are saying, like, what's the point of these guys?
Yeah, the 70s was really, late 60s, early 70s, there was real anti-monarchist sentiment. So this would actually feed into correcting that, because when you look at the size of the royal family, the Queen has 4 children.
Yeah.
All of those 4 children also have children. And in some of those cases, she's a great-grandmother. So at what point do you start trimming the tree back as far as
financially,
who's all going to get supported, who's all going to get a role, who's all going to get recognized? Now, I would suggest probably Harry's not one you want to trim back too far, but Prince Andrew has 2 daughters.
Those people
Princess
I don't
Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and they have careers, but they still get a lot of perks and benefits from being the granddaughters of Queen Elizabeth. And people would say, what value are we getting there? So there's an argument to be had that, Prince Charles has said in the past that he would like to see the royal family narrowed down. And when you look at it, it's only his line that's going to continue the monarchy. It's not going to be Prince Edward or Princess Anne. It's going to be Charles' line. So if you're saying, okay, the value for your money is with Charles' family, so don't worry about what's happening with cousins and great nieces and nephews and things like that. Just keep Meghan and Harry happy. Yeah. Keep the positive vibe, because they have brought a lot of positivity with her being, the first biracial member of the royal family. Yeah. I mean, they got tremendous positive media and brand boost out of the fact that she was welcomed, she's been treated well. It's unfortunate. I think they've had to deal with a lot with her personal life, and then her transition. She was older coming into the royal family, and I think it's hard enough for people who have grown up in that environment. I can't imagine being in my 30s and
having to adjust.
Can you imagine?
It's incredible how many rules there are. Like, I obviously don't know them all, but the select few I know, I couldn't remember all of those. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of training. It's a lot of memory, and I feel like Meghan was kind of brought into a losing game, as you said, with her past, with all these things kind of not really against her, but not really working for her in some people's eyes. I think I
would say though that with Meghan, she had the benefit of coming after Diana, because Diana had no supports. And that was actually the big issue, finding out later in the marriage with Charles and Diana, was the fact that she felt utterly alone and completely unsupported. So when both Kate and Meghan come on to the scene, they have learned from the mistakes of the past, and the royal household and their staff is much more in tune to, we need to work with these young ladies, and we need to coach them, and we need to spend time educating them on what the protocols are, and the fact that, who's curtsying to whom, and at what time of day, and how to handle heads of state, because that is what this role is. For me, I really like a separation between my work and my home. Yeah. And I think it would be very difficult to be in either of their shoes and to find yourself non-stop. Your personal life and your work life are completely one and the same. Yeah. If you have a squabble with your brother-in-law, well, suddenly that's front page news, and it's impacting the whole entire brand of the monarchy. Like, there's very few jobs or few lifestyles that have that kind of duality.
And repercussions.
Right? And the things that are said about them and the media in Britain, they have and they haven't learned their lesson since Princess Diana. Yeah. You can see with both William and Harry how they've both reacted to certain overtures in the media toward their families. Yeah. And they have to. They know what happens if they don't put their foot down or draw that line in the sand. People can die. Mm-hmm. So I totally respect them for having the intestinal fortitude to say, here's some pushback. We're not going any further with this. And to try and balance, even with Kate and William, to try and, here's the kids, but we're not going to show you everything about the kids. We're going to release photos. We don't want you taking photos. Yeah. Like it works as a give and take, as opposed to just being things ripped from them all the time.
Which is fair enough. That's respectable. It's not, it's not this royal famous family that's saying they're cutting off from completely from the spotlight, because then what's the point of the royal family? Mm-hmm. So you need to have that give and take. It's very interesting because not a lot, as you said, I don't think there's any other type of career or lifestyle like an actor. I don't think an actor can even come close to reacting. No. Like even someone famous like The Rock cannot come close to what they have to, like me slouching right now. That's not good. If I was in the royal family, that's a no-no. Yeah. That's front page news.
That's right.
So it's
how things are read and
it's almost
perceived.
Ridiculous.
It is. So if it ends up that Meghan and Harry move to Canada, if it ends up they have a household here, and maybe that's their North American base, I can see it being Vancouver or Toronto or something like that. Like
not necessarily Ottawa. I don't
see that.
I don't see it.
She has roots in Toronto from when she worked in Suits.
Yes.
So I can see it being like the greater Toronto area or outside of Toronto type thing.
The Invictus Games as well. Harry has some connections to Toronto.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I would agree with you. It's either going to be like Toronto or somewhere maybe a little more locale, somewhere a little less big city, more or less type stuff. That's what I would say.
Well, if they have a place in London or in England, then that would maybe be the more profile location. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how it works out, and I really hope it works out well for everybody. I mean, there's no need to pin Harry and Meghan down to anything when they've already got, like I say, succession is handled. Things are going well. Let everyone have kind of their flexibility and let the monarchy continue to evolve the way it has the last 20 years.
It's been evolving quite a bit.
Yeah, and it has to.
Yeah.
Anything that stands the test of time, and wants to be around, for the next 100 years.
It has to get used to changing.
Absolutely. Because then it becomes obsolete. And I don't think anybody wants that.
No.
And if anybody's a great testament of that, it's the Queen, with the changes she's had in her lifetime.
Yeah.
So anyway, it'd be interesting to hear from our listeners to see what you guys think. Yes. If it's a case of, and actually, leave us messages as soon as you can. Like, let us know if you think that, how you think it's going to go, what your outcome is projected to be.
Do you want them to move to Canada? Do you want them to maybe not move to Canada for some reason?
Yeah.
Literally, let us know.
Just keep it positive. We don't want to trash anybody. No. We're not into trashing anybody. We just want to find out what your thoughts are. So if you want to let us know your thoughts, you can go to our email, which is chatspodcast@gmail.com. Or you can leave a message on our Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you there. And if you get a chance, make sure you're giving us some review feedback on the various platforms that you are listening to us on. Yes. And I know I've been saying iTunes. It's not iTunes. It's Apple Podcast.
Apple Podcast.
Can you clunk me over the head the next time I say iTunes?
But Apple Podcast, Spotify,
Google Play. Yeah.
Tons of places to listen to us, and if you're listening to us, then you probably found one of them.
Yeah, and recommend it to your friends, because we'd love to have more listeners and get some more feedback. And if you have a suggestion for an upcoming podcast, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We already have a list. We sat down last week and I thought about this, we thought about that, and maybe the next couple of days we'll get another one out right away, because we've had some interesting conversations lately.
Yeah, but if we get any fan requests, then we can move that right to the top of the queue.
Oh, yes.
Of course, right away.
You bump our stuff for sure.
Yes. Well, thank you for listening. This has been me, Corbin.
And Sarah.
And thank you for listening. And don't forget to tune in to our next chats.